Hello guys, welcome to Texas Masbatenia lovers. I'm just doing a long overdue video here talking about my first visit to the Philippines, my impressions, just some things that I was encountering before my trip, advice that I got from people, some fears and considerations I had. It was a big leap to decide to get on that plane November 2016 and go to a faraway, strange country. And that time I really did not know my honey that well, but it was well worth the trip, because here we are 3 years later almost, and we're planning on getting married and all that. But I'm going to turn back the page a little bit here and talk about just my first impressions of things that went on. And just to make sure I stay on track, I'm going to admit I'm going over a little script here. So if there's any delays or whatever, it's because I'm glancing down at this thing. So my first visit to the Philippines was, like I said before, it was November 2016. Me and my honey had talked about this a few months prior, of course. And I remember one of the first things that happened is I'm telling people at work that I'm going to the Philippines, I'm going to meet this lady, and a lot of people were happy for me. But of course, there was a few people there a little cautious of my decision to go there. I mean, I look back on it now with a little bit of humor, but I remember back then people telling me, hey, be careful. A lot of girls there are gold diggers. Make sure you know this girl and you're verifying what she's saying. And I was being asked, is she asking you for money, blah, 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 blah. And at that point, I did have a little bit of fear in my heart, because, you never met that person up until this point. And the early part of our relationship, we did not really video chat, maybe just one time. So it was all pictures, all chat. There wasn't the issue like some other foreigners encountered with the lady asking for all kinds of money, but it was a big leap of faith to prepare to jump on that plane and go there. So we'll fast forward to that trip that I took on the 4th of November 2016. So guys, the first thing, if you're traveling there, especially here from the United States, is you need to be ready for an extremely long flight, especially if you're living in a city like San Antonio, where I'm at, where it's not an international gateway airport. In other words, there are no direct flights from here over to Philippines or Hong Kong or any other connecting areas. So if you're in a smaller city, you're going to be flying to one of those hub airports, San Francisco, Minneapolis, Chicago, even Atlanta. You're going to be going out of your way, and then you'll be catching a flight most likely into Hong Kong, Taipei, or Tokyo. You're going to be on that plane, if you're doing cheaper tickets like me, you're going to be on that plane a total of 20 hours, 3 planes. The only way you're going to luck out is if you get a flight to Los Angeles and it's going straight to Manila. So be ready for that. And I was not ready the first time. I was all hyper to see my honey and did not sleep on any of the flights hardly. It's kind of hard to sleep anyway with babies crying and all that. And I got to Manila dead dog tired. The other thing is too, of course everybody knows this, your body, your time clock in your body is going to be stuck back here in America. So when you're arriving there in the Philippines, if you're arriving there at 10 at night, your body thinks it's 10 in the morning, but you've had no sleep. So all kinds of strange things are going to be going on in your mind. You're going to be awake in the middle of the night the first few days and dead tired in the middle of the day. There is a 13-hour time difference between here in Texas and Manila, and that varies depending on where you are in this country. So that's the first thing to think about. So I'll just get into what my experience was. I arrived there in Manila. I think my first flight was a late one. It was like 10:50, 11 o'clock. And you have to go through an immigration checkpoint. You got to show your passport and all that. And on your first few visits, it's a good idea to have proof that you have a hotel itinerary printed out. And in some cases, they will ask to see your return tickets, or at least an itinerary showing you're going to be leaving the country. You get a 30-day visa to stay there. So all that being done, I was in an immigration not very long. That was not a very busy time of the year. And so I arrived at the waiting area, and my honey was waiting there with her family. And of course, she was very much more beautiful than I expected. So we went out there in the front and found a taxi. And my first impression stepping off the plane is, oh my God, this place is very, very humid. I mean, San Antonio here is very hot, but the air there is very thick. So I was kind of shocked by that. So we get into a taxi, and that was an experience in and of itself. Okay, continuing my video here. I was interrupted by a call, sorry. When getting into the cab, it was pretty standard experience. But the funny thing is, I was all curious about my surroundings. Everything is different there in Manila. Of course, you know, there's some areas that are not so good and areas that are good. And I wanted to get some late night videos, but it was real funny. My honey grabbed me and said, hey, roll the window up, it's dangerous here. So I started wondering, oh, what's going on here? But I heeded her warning because it's not my country. And I just noticed something really scary. I noticed that some of the streets there in the Philippines have no stop sign or no traffic lights. So it was funny, and sometimes I was in a panic because I'd see the cab driver just plow through an intersection. And I guess these guys have it all timed out because they've done it so many times. But I'm sitting there thinking we're going to get into a wreck, but we never did. But that's one thing to note. The traffic is very bad. We did encounter a lot of bad traffic there in Manila that night, and the cab driver kind of lost his way, and it took us a long time to finally find the hotel when we got there. So continuing on, got to the hotel. We ordered some food, ate a little pizza. I was kind of shocking because everybody there, of course, was eating rice with pizza. So I was like, wow, that's completely different. And of course, I bombed out, went to sleep because I was up on the planes the entire time. So daytime comes, and that's when my awakening began. I looked outside, and I just realized how different everything looks there versus the United States. I mean, very beautiful. You could see the bay in the distance. I think the place was the Bellini Suites over there close to Paranaque. Very beautiful area, but when I get out there on the street with my honey the first time, that was my first time really getting a close look at how things are, how you see all, the majority of everybody there does not own their own car. Everybody had motorcycles, jeepneys, and I wasn't used to the pollution, so I was doing a lot of coughing and sneezing, but it was still a very beautiful, fun experience. And of course, I was so happy to see my honey. So that's just pretty much my first impression being there. Little scared, you know, I heard some stories of people getting kidnapped and things like that, but I knew better and well enough that if I stayed in public areas, and this is just advice, staying in public areas, don't go to where you're not familiar with. And we both listened to that advice, and you know, she's a resident there, so she knew where to go and not to go. And we went to a place called Jollibee, which is kind of like the Philippine version of McDonald's. And it was a little different than what I'm used to. You know, I had rice with my chicken the first time, and just trying to get used to having rice that early in the daytime. So we had chicken for breakfast. But very cool experience, and I very much enjoyed it with her. And we just spent kind of the day getting to know each other and just cruising around the area. I got to see the SM Mall there for the very first time. The one thing that's really still big and part of life there in the Philippines is shopping malls. Whereas here in the United States, they're kind of fading out, and now you have these giant strip malls here, which everything is outdoor. Well, malls are a very big part of life there in the Philippines. I think a lot of people just go there to enjoy the air conditioning. I know we did. But pretty much everything we have here in the States, they have over there in the Philippines. McDonald's is there, Kenny Rogers, a place that closed a long time, Dairy Queen, Burger King, Starbucks, and I enjoyed all of them. So it's pretty much what we did the very first day. After a few days, we traveled to her province, which is Masbate. I was on kind of a tight budget, so I did it the cheap way. We took a bus there from the terminal in Alabang, and from that bus ride is at least 10 to 12 hours, maybe even more. It goes through a lot of mountainous areas, and let me tell you, the drivers there have no fear of going down the wrong lane to pass people, going fast up and down mountain hairpin turns and all that. So I was kind of shocked and scared, but I got used to it. But it was just a different experience, really cool. We got to the port like 2 or 3 in the morning, waited for the barge, and I enjoyed the barge, of course, a lot more than being cooped up in the bus. One thing to note about the buses there are designed for people that are shorter, Asian size. The average man there is 5'7", 5'8", a few tall people, but the buses are very crammed quarters if you're tall like me. So I kind of got off that bus feeling stiff, but I got over it pretty quick. Like I said, I enjoyed the barge. It's about 3-4 hours. I'd say 4 hours to get to Masbate Island, and took a lot of pictures. I enjoyed the very fresh air. And then when we got to Masbate, it was just a totally different experience. That's province life. There's only one mall there in Masbate City, one McDonald's, 2 Jollibees, and a lot of the family-owned restaurants. And a lot less polluted than Manila. I noticed there not as many jeepneys. Most everybody there, the vast majority, has their own car or they're riding a motorcycle. I don't remember the exact method that we used to get to where her parents' place was, but I think we took a van there. Very nice. It's very nice to have air conditioning. That is a luxury there in the Philippines. I would say that of the people I encountered, only maybe 1 in 10 people there have air conditioning. So it took a lot of getting used to, spending nights at places with no air. I was sweltering, thought I was going to die. But then again, you get used to things and adapt to things. Her parents' place, very beautiful property up on the mountain. We had to take a motorcycle up there. The road was very bumpy. And when you're riding on a motorcycle and the person that's riding you is much smaller than you are, you're worried about balance. So a little scared and spooky, but it was just so nice to see completely tropical, lush jungle type area. So my first impressions, after the shock of Manila, is I very much enjoyed it. Such a beautiful area, especially there in the province. I would say some advice that if you're not used to province life, that you take a lot of vitamins, or maybe take something like they have something called Airborne they're selling to prevent you from catching colds. I did get a very sore throat there and just felt kind of nasty by the time I left there and went back to Manila. The impressions of the people there is, no matter how poor they are, and it is a very poor country in comparison to the USA, they will offer you literally the shirt off their back. Any food they have left, they will give it to you. The hospitality is great. And I'm not trying to get political here, and I'm not disparaging any one group of people. You got to make those disclaimers now, is that their attitude there about being poor is different than here. Over there in the Philippines, you don't see people complaining about their situation. They'll find ways to open up new businesses. ways to make money, opening up sorry stores, selling load for cell phones. Instead of complaining about the situation, they will just find a way to make money and not pass the blame. You know, over here, sometimes you hear people blaming their situation as far as being poor on other people, political groups, or passing the blame for their situation onto another group. You don't see that over there. So I was very much refreshed by that attitude. So that's just my impression of the people there. And the weather there, let's touch on that for a bit. You will see rain at that time of the year in November almost every day. That's the beginning of the rainy season. It's a tropical climate. It's only, anywhere between 14 degrees and 9 degrees above the equator. So they basically have a hot season and a rainy season. It's kind of funny what they consider cold. Like it gets in the 70s. My honey was cold and wearing a jacket. And for me, it was just a perfect experience. I enjoyed it. But unless you're used to it, you're going to be shocked the fact you're going into homes with no air conditioning, and you're just going to have to get used to it like I did. Have a fan blowing on you, get an air cooler. But it is a tropical climate. There's a lot of rain, and you better bring mosquito repellent there because you're going to get bit up. And I noticed if you're not from that country, they get bit by a mosquito. They're not going to have red welts all over them, but whereas if you're not from there, it's going to show. So good advice, put on some protection against mosquitoes, especially if you're going into the province area. I have been to the Philippines 5 times. I pretty much touched on my first visit. I'm not going to go into detail to each visit, otherwise this video would be like 20 hours long. But my second visit, I was pretty much used to the place. My second visit was in May of 2017. We went to Baguio, which is a beautiful area north of Manila. I'd say, a good 4 hours travel north of Manila. Mountainous area and very refreshing because the temperature is about 25 degrees cooler than the rest of the country. So again, my honey was freezing, wearing her jacket, and me, I was walking around in a t-shirt. And it's very foggy up there because of the climate's different. They grow strawberries. Things that grow easily in the USA only grow in certain areas of the Philippines, like apples, strawberries. A lot of strawberry farms up there, a lot of cooler weather crops, but just beautiful area. We went on a tour. We hired a driver to take us around for, I think, 3,000 pesos to take us around to different sites. The one thing that stuck out in my memory was the grotto, I think they called it. I don't remember the exact name, but it's a Catholic church at the top of a large hill. So you're climbing hundreds of stairs to get there, and if you're not in shape, you're going to go up to the top of that mountain thinking you had a heart attack. But it's well worth the walk up there. Very beautiful views, and got a lot of pictures. The other things we did was this tour of the city. Saw a strawberry farm. Very beautiful area. For me, absolutely perfect weather. And then, we went back down to Manila and just spent time chilling out there, going to malls and whatever. We did not go to Masbate on that one trip. My third visit was December of 2017. Now that one was very interesting because both me and her traveled to Hong Kong, very short trip, just there 2.5 days. That was my first time to a Chinese territory. I was very impressed with the city, absolutely meticulously clean. Everything's automated, the trains, everything was just futuristic. A lot of tall buildings, but I won't go into too much detail about Hong Kong. We stayed in a hotel called the Warwick Inn on Chung Chau Island. Very cool, their ferry system there. They have the slower ferry, which takes about 2 hours to get there, but they have this high-speed ferry, which literally jumps over the surface of the water when it's going fast, so cool. And you get to that island within an hour. And again, my honey just froze because that's winter. You know, temperatures were in the lower 60s. And to me, it was just light jacket weather. So it's just funny how when you're brought up in a tropical climate and you're exposed to that cool weather, she was freezing and I was okay. But we got through it. We enjoyed that. It was her first time ever flying, period, taking a plane and then going to another country. The second part of our visit was we went back to her province, and we met her. You know, we met her family members, some of the people we didn't meet before. We stayed in hotels, did a lot of eating out. The highlight of that trip was there was a small typhoon that came through, kind of close to the end of my visit. Signal 1, and it wasn't even that bad by, you know, even their standards, very rainy, but they canceled all ferry trips back to the mainland and all flights. And so I was late getting back to Manila and I missed my flight going back to America. So my management wasn't all too happy about that, and it ended up costing me an extra $1,200 because I missed my flight to book a ticket back to America, and we had to book an expensive flight on Philippines Airlines going back from Masbate, and there was no flights going to Manila. We went to Clark Air Force Base, which is a former American Air Force base. That was kind of a cool experience, seeing, you know, what that place looked like. You could pretty much tell by its layout that it was a former Air Force base, but basically you have to take a bus back from that area to get back to Manila, and that is a good 4-hour bus ride, and we went through traffic. So it kind of cut through away my enjoyable time with her. We were kind of stressed, tired. By the time we got back to her house, it was time to go to sleep, and then I had to get up for my flight at like 4:35 in the morning. It's kind of a rush getting back, but very cool trip. Got to go to Hong Kong. I remember catching a really bad cold in the province again. It's a good idea to make sure you're taking vitamins and protecting your immune system. And if you're not from there, wear a face mask. You know, I hate the feeling of the face mask, but I avoided everybody's good suggestion and I did not wear it, and I think I paid the price. So that was pretty much the end of whatever happened on my third visit. My fourth visit was October 2016. We pretty much chilled out in Manila the first few days. You know, you're doing what we usually do, meeting up with her sister, hanging out with her, other family members, going to malls, eating out, and going to malls. Like I said before, that's a big part of life there in the Philippines. It's, you know, it's air conditioned, it's comfortable, and everything's just there. But we did travel back to Masbate on that trip, and pretty much stayed downtown at the Ross Hotel. Very nice place. I very highly recommend that. Clean Wi-Fi. So if you're going to Masbate, stay at the Ross Hotel. And just talking again about other things we did at Masbate. We always would pick up her children there because her children are staying there in the province, and spend time with them. You know, that trip was a while ago. I don't remember all the exact details, but we did not do any international travel. Some things kept popping up all the time, so we did not go anywhere on that October, you know, outside of the Philippines on that visit. But very, very enjoyable. My last visit was just this past April. I left April 20th and stayed there till May 7th. Kind of funny thing, all four of my visits, the four previous visits, I was always wanting to go see Ocean Park, which is there in Manila, but never had the time. So we always joking about that, like, Scott, when are you going to go to Ocean Park? But I'll get to that in a minute. So this past the visit here, April, again, you know, we spent a lot of time together with her sister, going to malls, eating out. And one of the cooler things, well, I won't call it cool, is I experienced my first earthquake. We're standing there first day at the SM South Mall there in Las Piñas. And my honey, he says real loud in a scared voice, and other people are panicking. They're saying earthquake. For some reason, I could not feel that earthquake underneath my feet, but I did see the light fixtures swinging, and I started getting a little worried. But then it immediately stopped. And then we find out the earthquake was up there a good 4 hours away, up there around the Clark Air Force area. And there was some damage up there. So I can just say you can add that to my experiences. That was my first earthquake experience. We went again to Masbatenia. This time we're kind of in a rush to get there, and we didn't order the bus in time, the one with the bathroom. Let me tell you, it's no fun riding a bus that has no bathroom, that only stops 3 times in 12 hours. So if you're taking a bus anywhere, either don't take the bus, take a plane, or plan ahead and get the comfortable bus with the bathroom. But nevertheless, it was a very enjoyable trip. We went up there to where her sister's staying, picked up her children, came back down to Masbate City, and we went on an island hopping trip. Very beautiful, very cheap price, less than 1,000 pesos, and you're out there all day visiting 4 or 5 different islands, and I got beautiful pictures. The water I saw was the most incredible color I've ever seen in my life. It was basically just a smaller boat. They serve meals on it, and we basically do what the title says, hopping from island to island until you get close to back to the city, and they take you back to the port. So that, I'm going to say, was one of my most memorable experiences. Again, I got a little sick on that trip, and we again were rush, forgot to get a bus in the appropriate advance time, and ended up having to get stuck on a non-air conditioned bus, an ordinary bus, on the way back. And we're sitting there at the port in that bus waiting for the barge. I guess there was a big delay in getting the barges into the port. We don't know what that delay was, but sitting in the bus, and it's so hot, so I felt like I was a piece of meat cooking in an oven, and I was turning a little sick, probably caught something. The barge was a big relief. I remember sleeping a lot on the barge on the way back. And then getting back to the city, Manila, it was a big struggle for me. Very sick, kind of camped out at my honey's place the next few days, resting, trying to get over the sickness. Got over it, and then finally, after 5 visits, I went to a place that I very much anticipated. It was Ocean Park. Highly recommended if you're going to Manila to check that out. It's a lot of shows. They have dolphin shows, bird shows, a very cool aquarium with literally hundreds of thousands of gallons of water where you could literally walk under the water. They have an enclosed area. Just a very beautiful experience. And then, of course, I went back to home the very next day, and kind of sick on the way back, but it's just kind of giving good advice to foreigners. Keep your immune system up. Wear a face mask when you're in areas that are polluted, or you're thinking, especially if you're on jeepneys and you're in a very closed space with other people. I'd say not so much wear it in a taxi, but if you're going to be in a van or with other people, if you're not from there, until your body is acclimated and builds up some kind of resistance against the local flu bugs there, I would say good advice to wear a face mask. I'll learn that the hard way myself. So that pretty much sums up my impressions of the country. It has its problems, so do we. There are some areas you cannot go, but the vast majority of the country is very safe, and they're very warm, outgoing, very friendly people. And love my honey very much, and I'm looking forward again to my next visit there to see her again. And that's all, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like the video, set the reminder, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks a lot, guys, and thank you.